Teaching has gone downhill in the last 20 years. Parents disappeared, reading scores are down, and behavior is wild. This teacher explains it all.
These are actual seating charts that I found as I was cleaning out my desk today. So this represents the year 2005, and this is how many of my students are reading on grade level. Everything in blue, so 1.5 students out of like a group are struggling readers, but pretty much everybody's reading at least on level, some even higher, okay? 2025. How many of my students are reading on grade level? Okay, this next is an average of how many of my students failed my class. Like they are going to have to repeat this. There's no recovering. They failed. This is 2005. 0.5 student out of all of my students. This is this year. This is this year. On average, I teach about 100 students. On average, this is how many students in each class are not passing. They're going to have to take this class again. Okay, next, the orange represents in 2005, parent involvement. I always had parents either in my inbox asking about lessons, volunteering for field trips, or anything that we needed for our classroom, volunteering supplies. 2005, 2025. Where are the parents that are supposed to be involved in their school? Behavior issues. Students in 2005 that I had to like write up on referrals, call home, maybe have parent-teacher conferences for poor behavior. Out of a whole classroom, there was always like at least one bad apple, okay? 2025. Put your cell phone away. Why are you showing up to my class 15 minutes late? Don't talk to me like that. Don't call them the N-word. So that is why you are seeing teachers leaving like in a mass exodus, just in droves, exiting the classroom this year. Most of it has to do with parenting, screen time. You put a cell phone in the hands of a small child and just give them unfettered access to the internet. Do you think they care about what's going on in my class?
If you've noticed I've been MIA, you'd be correct, DA, because I'm still looking for a job, and my job is fairly high stakes for corporate. I'm going for senior level positions, mid-level positions, so a lot of the job searching is grueling. You get multiple interview rounds and test projects, and it doesn't always work out. As you can see, I'm still looking, but I do have a really fantastic prospect in the chamber, and I just got accepted to a second interview. So things are looking up at the moment, but of course, job searching is a roller coaster. You get up and then you go back down. So we'll see what happens with this prospect. But I've been really focusing on searching for work and improving my portfolio. You know, every round that doesn't work, I go back to the drawing boards, I fix my portfolio, I fix my resume, and that's exactly what you have to do every single time. And half the time you're not even getting rejected because you're not qualified, you're getting rejected because there was somebody more qualified. So it's not that I'm a total failure or just totally unqualified for what I'm searching for. It's that there was somebody that much better that they went with. And it's totally understandable. I totally get it. You want to choose the best person for your company. But enough of my rambling. I've been absent also because I'm in a long distance relationship, and a lot of my energy goes to that relationship, and it goes to job searching, and it goes to fixing my portfolio. I'm a graphic designer, by the way, if you're curious, but my energy's been going to these places instead of my channel. I do feel when I get a job, hopefully I can put more consistent energy back into the channel. But today I did want to talk about something that has been concerning me, and it's the future of the world. I mean, who isn't concerned about the future of the world? But it's more so the generation that is coming after us. I'm a millennial, and I would say, yes, Gen Z is also concerning due to the Gen Z stare. There's this Gen Z stare happening where if somebody, if you don't know what the Gen Z stare is, Gen Z will say, well, if you say something stupid, I'm just going to stare at you. Or if you're being an annoying customer, I'm just going to stare at you. First of all, that's rude. I understand people are stupid, and you might not want to engage with stupidity. But that's not really the Gen Z stare, because there are more instances of the Gen Z stare that don't come with the person on the other side being an idiot or an annoying Karen or something like that. The Gen Z stare occurs mostly during random interactions, you know, like even other Gen Zers will say, I go up to somebody at school, try to make friends, and they just stare at me. Like, is something wrong with you? Like, maybe if I stare at them oddly, they'll just go away. So Gen Z stare is like an antisocial behavior. It's like, I just don't want to interact with you, fuck off. But not doing it in a very polite way. It's almost like, yes, we are losing the ability to just communicate with each other at a very basic level. And I do get it. I understand that the customer is not always right, and we don't have to be overly fake or overly polite or overly friendly or performative every time we talk to somebody. Yeah, even at work. I get that too. I'm an introvert. I'm someone who doesn't like to talk to others. I don't approach people. People approach me. And when they do approach me, I'm very friendly. I will give them a smile. But of course, there's times when people approach me where I sense that they're maybe trying to condescend me or mansplain or womansplain, or, you know, you can just tell that there's something off with them. Maybe they're predatory, or they probably are trying to use me or don't have my best interest in mind, and you can just kind of sense that. I'll talk back to them, but I will do it in like a gray rock type of a way. If you don't know what gray rocking is, it's just flat tone, no smiles, just like, hey, how are you? You know, like nothing crazy, nothing performative, nothing wild. Saving my energy. Like the other day, I was putting away my kayak after kayaking, and my kayak is an inflatable kayak. It's a high quality inflatable kayak, about $300. But nonetheless, it's a kayak, and some guy, you could tell he had a lot of money. He came up upon, we were on the boat ramp or the boat launch. And he came up with his, like, you could tell it's probably like a $3,000 kayak, fishing kayak, with a bunch of, you know, it's got the works on it, and he has like his own like chauffeur picking him up. So you can tell this guy has money. He kind of looks down upon me and is like, oh, is that a raft? You got a raft there? And it's like, and I was like, no, it's a kayak. You know, it's just like, oh, is that like good quality? Like, can you actually use it? Could someone like me use it? You know, referring to the fact that he's a large man. I'm like, yeah, it's made for everybody. You know, nothing like I'm not being defensive. I'm not being emotional. I'm not being friendly and performative. I'm just being flat. So that is always an option as well. But the Gen Z stare takes it to another level where they just stare at you. They, you know, you go into a store and the cashier, you say like, hey, how are you? Or how's it going? And they're just like, and you're like, well, I was looking for like some help. I'm trying to find this. And like, you just feel like dumb. You feel dumb because you're going to a store looking for something specific. You're not trying to be annoying. You're not trying to be a Karen. You're just trying to buy an item from this particular store, and the Gen Z person just stares at you. So it's me saying, hi, how are you? I'm seeking ... Is that stupid? Is that too stupid for you, Gen Z? I'm sorry. But yes, as a millennial, and I'm a younger millennial, I'm actually very close to Gen Z. As a younger millennial, it's off-putting, and even to some Gen Z, it's off-putting. But oh, it's raining. But there's also something else concerning going on, and that is that teachers are leaving the workforce. And this is not because of Gen Z, because Gen Z, I'm pretty sure, are all college age at this point. I think the younger Gen Z people are now in college. I think they're out of high school. I could be wrong. So Gen Z is leaving school and entering the workforce. So when I say these teachers are leaving, they are emotionally, mentally exhausted, not from Gen Z, but from Gen Alpha. There is something going on with Gen Alpha. Now, these are the kids that we were calling iPad babies when I was, maybe 10 years ago, 4, 5, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, 8 years ago, whatever it was. These were the kids that we were referring to as iPad babies because the parents, which are millennials probably, were, I guess, soothing Gen Alpha with the iPad, as opposed to what a millennial was soothed with, which might be like a pacifier or a blankie or a stuffed animal. They give them the iPad, right? Temper tantrum, here's the iPad. Crying, here's the iPad. Yelling, screaming, misbehaving, here's the iPad, And it's almost like this pattern of non-parenting, where the iPad's actually doing the parenting. And that's very unfortunate because, okay, as kids, you get the kiddie TV shows, which is fine and dandy. Maybe they're learning something. But then as they get older, into their teens, preteens, now the parent is social media. Now the parent is TikTok. Now the parent is social media influencers. Oh my God, how awful is that? And teachers are leaving the workforce en masse. Number one, they don't get paid enough. We've known this for a very long time. We've known this since I was in school. Teachers don't get paid enough. They never have. And it's likely that they never will. But not only that, the kids are misbehaving. And someone said, I saw a video, and I might bring up a few videos today to kind of show you what I'm talking about. But somebody else in another video that I forgot to save was saying that the reason that teachers cannot handle these students is because there is an extreme emotional immaturity pandemic, and that's something that I've been talking about for a while now, and it's going to get worse. And I think it kind of started with millennials a little bit. Now, don't get me wrong, I do think boomers and Gen X and whoever the fuck is also immature. I think they are immature as well, but possibly in a different way. Like, it seems that boomer generation is a little bit immature in the sense that they just push it down. They don't like to deal with their emotions, so they shut it off. That's what their parents taught them. Their parents, I forget what their generation was called. Was it like the greatest generation or something? I don't know. Or the silent generation? I forget. Their parents were cold. So boomers were taught to stuff their emotions and to bottle them. And then boomer parents taught millennials, tried to teach millennials to also do that, but instead millennials were just emotional beings who were traumatized by the boomers. And Gen X, by the way. Sorry, I forgot Gen X. Gen X kind of dealt with it, while millennials were like, no, we're sick of this. And that's where like kind of the therapy generation came from, which is the millennial. I do believe that millennials are like kind of the therapy generation. So each generation is immature in its own way, but I think it's getting worse. I know that IQ has gone down. I think Gen Z is the first generation where the median IQ is lower than the generation prior. Every generation the median IQ has gone up. But in Gen Z's case, it's gone down, and it's going to continue to go down. I don't think IQ is the end-all be-all for the measurement of intelligence either. I'm not saying that. But there is something to say when the median IQ has always gone up and now it's not. So that is a little bit concerning. There is something to the measurement of IQ. There is something to it. I don't think, again, it's not the end-all be-all, but you can't argue that IQ has some sort of meaning inside a person's intelligence and capabilities when it comes to thinking, critical thinking, complex thinking, things like that, solving problems. And the reason is, I do believe, social media. All generations have lost attention span because of social media. All generations, and I think even generations following, are now developing so much ADHD, neurodivergence, and it's going to be used as an excuse. I'm screaming my head off in public as an adult because I'm neurodivergent. These things are going to become excuses for these people, and they're going to be excused happily by society because that's the pattern, that's what's happening now, so it's going to get worse. And I do believe, along with that video saying the emotional immaturity is terrible in these kids because they're not learning how to deal with their emotions, they're being given a pacifier, and that pacifier is the iPad, and it's worse than just an actual pacifier or a binky, whatever you want to call it. He also stated that one big reason that these kids are emotionally immature is because their parents are also emotionally immature. Millennial generation is very special. They're a very nostalgic generation. We want to go back to being a child because our childhood was beautiful. It was the 90s, There were awesome movies, great entertainment, great video games. It should have just stopped there, right? Because it's like, eventually, the video games that we played were very difficult. And the movies that we watched ended. We didn't have streaming services that just never ended. And you had to work really hard. You had to work your brain really hard to get through the obstacles in a video game or whatever. Reading was still a thing. Computers and the internet were not very great. So we didn't stay on there very long. And if we did, we were probably playing like Roller Coaster Tycoon or The Sims. And again, these are not incredibly immersive. They can be, don't get me wrong. I played The Sims for 5 hours straight, multiple days in a row during summer break. So they can be immersive, but it just wasn't like social media. You had to actually think. You had to have an attention span for these things. So honestly, it was just different. It was a nostalgic era. Millennials want to go back. Millennials want to go back to that because we experienced it, we felt it for a good, at least decade of our lives. Maybe even some millennials 2 decades. We experienced that good, lovely, bad technological era. And even part of our lives had no technology, or little to no technology. Or technology that was just good enough, right? Where it was like a fun game that you could play, but you also are interested in going outside because the games that we played just weren't as immersive. They weren't as realistic looking. So it's like, okay, I'm done with this. I'm gonna go play outside now. I'm gonna go interact with my friends. I'm gonna go play my sport. It's like kids had interests in other things. I'm not saying kids don't have interests in other things these days. I've seen kids who are not interested at all in social media, which is great, but the major majority are. And it's leading to this incredible emotional immaturity within the following generations. Now you might be saying, well, why is that bad? Why is this bad? Well, because we're going to have to deal with these people. People my age, in their 30s, and even in their 40s, we're going to have to deal with this generation in the workforce. We're going to have to deal with this generation driving. We're going to have to deal with this generation shopping. We're going to have to deal with this generation parenting for 20 or 30 years before we die. You don't understand how generations work. Like, do you see the boomers? They're dealing with millennials, and boomers are still fucking alive. Boomers are still in Congress. We're kind of like, aren't boomers like supposed to be gone and old news? Like, why are they still in the workforce? Why are they still in Congress? Why are they still in politics? Because generations take a while to die. You live with, 2 to 3 generations behind you. You live with them for the rest of your life. So yes, we are going to have to deal with these generations. So what does that mean? That means they're going to probably be pretty bad drivers. They're going to be terrible in the workforce. We're going to have to pick up their slack. They might get fired more. Who knows? I don't know what AI is going to do with that. We're going to have to deal with them in the supermarkets, in the clothing stores, in the shopping areas, walking by them in the street. And if I could predict, I would say these people are going to be incredibly emotional. They're going to be quick to anger. They're going to be impatient, frustrated, lacking attention, and lacking social skills. So there's another thing in that. Dating is also going to be worse than it already is, because these people are going to enter the dating area. Now, most people my age now will not have to deal with dating these people because they're very young. But if you want to be 40 years old, 50 years old, dating somebody in their 30s and there's an age gap, you're going to have to be dating these people. You're going to have to, you might run into these people in your dating life. They'll mostly be dating each other, yes, but age gap relationships exist, right? So like if I were to date somebody in my 50s, 20 years younger than me, that person right now is only like 10 years old, which is incredibly disturbing to think about. No, I have no interest in dating a 30-year-old when I'm 50, but if I was, or if I did, dating 30-year-olds when I'm 50 it would be so weird and different because of the way that they socialize, or their lack of socialization, their lack of attention span. Now, I'm not saying these kids aren't going to be great and brilliant and bring new, fresh, innovative ideas. I hope that that's what happens. I don't want to say that all of this is terrible and bad and awful, but if the teachers are quitting in droves already because of some 10-year-olds acting out right now, like, what does that say for the future? What does that say for the future of us adults who are adults now, who will have to deal with them? If they're bad now, they're not going to get any better, right? So now I want to play some videos for you guys and react to them and talk about just the absolute debauchery that these teachers are dealing with. And I've been watching videos like this for years now. This is not something new. Like, teachers have been complaining about this for a while. I'm only making a video about it now because I have a channel. So let's take a look.
Teachers are frustrated because students don't know the basics anymore.
Explain the response I'm supposed to have when a 9th grade student asks me, what is the first month of the year? And I say, what do you mean the first month? Because you're not asking what I think you're asking. And they say, well, on this worksheet, it says, what was the world's population at the beginning of the year? I don't remember what's the first month. How am I supposed to type that in? Because all I could do was turn my head and go back to my computer and keep typing. I literally just ignored it because I can't say what a ridiculous, probably the stupidest question I've ever had in my life. And I can't say, oh, that's okay. You remember January, February, because you are 15 years old. And that was not the only student that asked me that question. What do you mean the beginning of the year? And some of them are like, oh, you mean like January 1st? Why do I have to say January 1st? The beginning of the year. That is universally understood as January 1st. Another question on their assignment was, what was the world population the day you were born? And what was the world population on your first birthday? And then they had to find the difference. The fact that I'd probably say half of my classes were asking me, what do you mean by our first birthday? And I'm like, your first birthday. And I had a girl say, I've never had a birthday. She's like, I never had a first birthday. And I'm like, yes, you have. And you had a second birthday and a third birthday and a fourth birthday. You're 15. Even when I said, because it's not a confusion problem, because even when I said, okay, when you turned 1, I had students that were like, well, if I was born in 2010, when would that be? And it was almost like they were guessing with me. They'd be like 2011, 2012. Why are you unsure? I just think with the cognitive level that our students are at, I think the most bare minimum rule that you can have today is no phones in your classroom, because they are not prepared to be able to multitask in that way. Because there's no way a child has the audacity to ask me, what is the first month of the year? And then you're going to pull out a cell phone to try to text, to go on TikTok or anything. That's insane. That should be the last thing on their mind, is a cell phone. When they don't even know the year that they turned 1 year old, the last thing they should think about is a phone.
That's concerning. Another thing I've been hearing is that these kids can't read. And if they can read, they're reading at many grade levels below what they should be. So a 15-year-old is reading at a 7th grade level. Or a 7th grader is reading at a 3rd grade level. Like, these things are concerning and ridiculous. Again, dealing with these people as adults in society. Can you imagine dealing with people that can't read? Dealing with people that every time they're confused or have a question, they go right to ChatGPT or some sort of robotic AI tool to help them figure shit out. How incredibly frustrating is that going to be, dealing with these people in adulthood? I mean, dealing with boomers right now who are unfortunately entering some stages of dementia, or they're just older and their brains are deteriorating, as happens with old age. Even dealing with boomers is frustrating sometimes right now. There's plenty of videos with like people trying to interact with the older generation, and it's like just not working. But this is going to be like, we're interacting with a younger generation that's supposed to be quicker, faster, brain is more elastic. And they're gonna be acting like they're old people. Like, I don't know what's going on, you know? This creator is great. She's been making videos for years. Her name is Teacher Therapy. Let's see another video for teaching.
Teacher hot take, okay? I don't think it was COVID that ruined student behavior or ruined the school system, because I know a lot of people say that. And before anybody comes at me, I taught for 15 years and I left the classroom. Part of the reason is because something has changed. The kids are on their phones all the time. Their attention span has tanked. And it seems like boundaries have just gotten softer. And you can kind of see how it trickles down. Like in school, the administration is always trying to appease the board. The board is always trying to appease the parents. The parents are always trying to appease the who? The kids. And the kids, they're not scared of anybody. They're not really accountable to anybody. And who's absorbing all of that? The teacher. And we're given less authority than ever, which is the part that really does not sit right with me. So for all of you people who've ever worked in a school system, I want to know, what changed the most since you started working there?
That's another great point. It seems as if there's a perfect storm going on. Now, the school system has always been shit. Always. I think school systems are set up almost as little prisons, and they teach you that you're going to be occupied 8 hours a day, and you're going to have an hour lunch, and you're going to get taught a lot of propaganda and things that don't matter and things that you'll never use in your adult life ever. We're not going to prepare you for adulthood. We're just going to teach you a bunch of nonsense. The school system has always been shit. It's always been bad. But it's even worse now because it's almost like the kids are being treated as royalty, and they're being spoiled. They're not being disciplined. They're not being held accountable. Like, when I went to school, typically there was like one bad kid per class, right? And eventually that kid would go to a school that was for bad kids. Sad, probably because bad home life, bad parents raising them badly. But now it seems like every single kid is like that. And what happens when every single kid is like that? The teachers lose control. They lose control of the classroom. They don't have anybody to hold for an example because the kids don't care. It's like 30 students against one adult. It makes zero sense. They've lost control of the classrooms, and the teachers are being yelled at by the parents. The parents are trying to say little Jimmy is failing, little Jimmy's acting out, little Jimmy's bullying little Billy, and it's like, pfft. The parents are getting angry at the teachers for not thinking as highly of little Jimmy and little Billy as they do, or whatever. I don't really know the reason. You know, when you're not really being a parent and disciplining your child, and you're just feeding them social media or giving them the iPad for them to pacify them, it does become hard to see your child's bad behavior because, of course, as a parent, you love your child. You see nothing but good within your child sometimes, and you don't believe what the teacher is saying half the time, especially if you yourself can easily pacify your child with an iPad. In school, they can't do that. In school, the teacher is actually kind of like the bad guy because the teacher's trying to make them work and use their brain, and the child doesn't want to do that, and so the teacher can't pacify your child like you can. And then, of course, what she said, the board seems to be siding more so with the parent than with the teacher, which really fucking sucks. But yeah, back in my day, I know I sound like I'm 80 years old, but back in my day, you were scared of the teacher. You were scared of the principal. You were terrified to be disciplined. You were terrified to get written up, terrified of detention. And if you weren't terrified of these things, you were known as one of the bad kids. Like, all the kids in the school would look at, I'm going to say Ashley because there were a lot of bad Ashleys at my school. They'd look at Ashley with her, like, big belly and crop tops and her piercings, and she was always in detention, and they'd say, Ashley is like the bad kid. Ashley's one of the bad kids, like, and she hung out with the bad kids. She'd smoke cigarettes, she'd smoke weed, she'd drink on the weekends, she was a partier, you know. But now it seems like, even if the kids don't party and drink and smoke, it seems like all of these kids are bad anyway. It seems like the kids just don't care. They don't care about their education. They don't care about being disciplined. They don't care about getting in trouble. The kids have no fear. There's no issues at all. There's no worries in their mind about their future. And I mean, it makes sense. What is there to look forward to in life for these kids? All they're seeing is like AI is going to take jobs. Political climate sucks. Wars, climate change. They're being told that their future is essentially not very bright. Meanwhile, millennials at least got told a lie. We at least got told a lie that the American dream still existed and we still had a chance to grab it. And so we were kind of motivated in that sense. Millennials were motivated with a lie. I'm not saying that that's right, but millennials had something. Let's look at we'll just look at one more video and then I'll shut up.
20 years of teaching, the teachers and I've noticed that the kids keep getting more difficult every year. And by difficult, I don't mean like I don't like them and they don't like me. I just mean like they really lack the foundational skills that school requires, whether that be the foundational social skills, fine motor skills, gross motor skills. Gross motor skills meaning like they fall out of their chairs. They drop the Chromebooks every day. Thankfully there's carpet in here. The boys want to touch each other nonstop. If I had $1 for every time I said boys stop touching each other, and this is middle school, I would have thousands this year. Thousands. Not the girls, especially not this year. No girls holding hands or anything like in previous years. But the boys, they're dying for affection. Do you know at home tickling your kid or like patting their shoulder or like playing with their hair is all considered affection? Boys need more affection. Okay, the middle schoolers, so like the 5th graders going into 6th grade next year, 1,000 times harder than the 6th graders this year. The 6th graders this year, 1,000 times harder than the 6th graders last year. The dopamine centers in their brain are fried. They're addicted to devices. The Chromebooks are the devil. The cell phones are the devil. Roblox is the devil. It's all ruining the kids. And it's not about personal preference. Like, they cannot critically think. I don't have my students on Chromebooks and I don't have them copying or doing notes. I make them use critical thinking every day and they hate me. Today they're making a poem called the Where I'm From poem, and they have to actually use their critical thinking. They have to think about their home. They have to think about adjectives.
That's concerning that these kids also don't know how to critically think, which means that we are creating armies, and by we I mean the parents, are creating armies of sheep. And people are already dumb. People are already sheeple. I know it's a stupid word, and even a lot of stupid people use the word sheeple. But for lack of a better term, most people are just obeyers. They obey. They go along with the status quo. They don't know how to critically think. They don't know how to say, hey, wait a minute, that's not right. And so we're creating more armies of people who are just going to blindly follow the status quo, the leaders, no matter how toxic they are. It's concerning. But critical thinking is not just important for worldly issues and politics. Critical thinking is important for nearly every single thing that you do as an adult. So these adults are going to be handicapped in a way. Another weird thing that she mentioned is that they're lacking in fine motor skills and other types of motor skills. I think she said gross motor skills, which overall is also concerning because what the fuck do you mean? So that's a concern for driving, I would say. They're going to be slower drivers. They're not going to think as quickly. They're not going to be able to make decisions as fast, and that's going to be bad with driving with them. I'm deeply concerned for the next 10 to 30 years living on this planet with these people as they grow into adult age, enter the workforce, enter the economy, enter the streets, whatever you want to call it, enter the roads. I'm concerned. This is very concerning. This is not good. This is unlike anything we've experienced prior. Again, like I said, we've never experienced a generation where the IQ is going down below prior generations, previous generations. We've never experienced that. We've never experienced technology at this level. We've never experienced dependency on this technology, which it seems like these kids are developing a dependence on this technology. This is shit we have never experienced. So is it going to be like WALL-E? Is it going to be like 1984? I don't know. It's hard to say, oh no, these kids are just going to come up and they're going to innovate, and they're going to change the way things work, and life will be better. It's hard to say that and be optimistic and positive about the next generations coming up when all I see and hear is bad things from these teachers. Like she said, it's not that they hate me and I hate them and we're like fighting all the time. It's not like that. It's more so, why can't you do this? Why can't you read? Why can't you hold things in your hands? Why can't you write like properly, like your age? Why can't you stop touching each other? Why, like, and we all know it's coming from the parents and the way that these kids are being raised. And I just make this video as an awareness video. If you're a parent, I mean, if I were a parent, I can't tell you what to do as a parent. Nobody can tell parents what to do. That's the sad part. That's the unfortunate part. But if I were a parent, my kids would not be getting technology. I would try to get them into a school that doesn't even use technology, at least not to a larger extent. Like maybe periods with computers, but not a school that just gives out Chromebooks like candy. You know, like my child would not have a phone until they were old enough to buy a phone for themselves. And if they got a phone, it would be like one of them old Nokia flip phones, so I could just track them and see where they're going, and they can call me and tell me that they're safe. That's it. No technology, no Facebook, no Instagram, no TikTok for my child. And that would be final. I'd be a very, very strict parent in that sense. My child would be reading books, they'd be playing chess, they'd be doing puzzles, they'd be doing word searches, they would be working their brains, they'd be playing sports, they'd be going outside. I'd tell them to go outside. Maybe I could give them my old Nintendo and say, here, play with this, but that's at the extent that they would be able to play with technology. They'd be able to dabble in it like I did, and that's about it. Anyway, thank you for your patience in dealing with my channel, and my channel being kind of all over the place and not very consistent, but I appreciate you guys as always. Love you guys, love my viewers. Please let me know down below what you guys think. If you think there's a solution, if you think that it's gonna be okay, it's gonna work itself out, let me know what you think. I actually get a lot of hate for saying these things. I don't know why. I don't hate any generations. I'm not a generational hater. I don't hate boomers or Gen X or Gen Z. I don't hate generations. Every generation has an issue. So I really don't think there's like a great generation and a bad generation. I just think that I'm concerned for the generation coming up into adulthood, Gen Alpha right now. So let me know what you think down below. And I will again try to keep posting once a week. But until next time, I'll see you in the next video.